Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be continuing with, we're on day 4 now. So I'm actually really proud of this because uh, we're still going strong with these videos, and there have been a few moments this week where I ran into some like technical difficulties where I either lost footage due to like weird reasons. Things didn't get recorded when I wanted them to, but yeah, we're kind of working through all that. We're getting all this sorted, and we're learning as we go, which I feel like getting these out of the way this early is good because I feel like this will just make the quality of the videos even better in the future. And hopefully I don't run into any more or too many issues later down the road. So yeah, can't really complain about that. But yeah, we're still going strong. So yeah, we're on day 4 of these videos, and a couple of things really to talk about. And I feel like also this will hopefully give a like a bit of a perspective on how to adapt when things do come up, especially if you're going through a pretty similar phase like I am, because things aren't always going to go smoothly. Um, there's a couple of things that happened today and a little bit yesterday that caused me to kind of pivot and change my plan for the cut. Nothing major, but there are things that do come up, and it's important to recognize that if anything comes up that will be affecting your progress, it is okay. It is completely okay. You just have to get comfortable with just adapting as you go, because it's not going to be perfect. And so that's kind of what started happening yesterday and a little bit today. So what I'm referring to is yesterday, day 3. If you saw that video, I talked about what my plan was for the day, how it's going to be an active rest day, and I recorded that like essentially in the morning of that day, right? So fast forward later that day and the beginning of this day, there were a couple things again that came up that I kind of had to just adapt to. One was yesterday, even though it was an active rest day. So, what that means again is I'm pretty much just doing like light cardio. I'm not lifting any sort of weights just so I can give my body a bit of time to recover. But again, I'm doing light cardio. I'm not expending that much energy, so you would think that my appetite, and it usually is the case, my appetite wouldn't be that big. And that was the case for the morning, where typically in the mornings I don't have too much of a big appetite. I was a little bit hungry that morning, but not anything really major. But later in the day, I noticed that I was getting pretty hungry. I even after like my typical meals when I have them in the day, because usually I have them around all the same time. Once I finished all my meals later in the night, I was pretty hungry again. And I essentially had two options on how I wanted to proceed with that. I could either tough it out and just go to bed hungry, which sucks, and essentially run the risk of waking up really hungry and having to get through, the day with that, or I could just eat, right? And I decided on just eating. I decided on not being in a deficit for that day, but instead just eating at maintenance. So my maintenance for yesterday was probably around 2,500, and I wanted to stay around like to 2,000, maybe a little bit lower than that. But I decided that it really just wasn't worth it for that day, and I decided to eat and just eat at maintenance. Now, the reason why I decided to do that, and this is something that may help some of you, especially if you're looking at either losing weight or even putting on weight. The reason why I decided to do that, it was very intentional. Um, I decided that it wasn't worth me going to bed hungry, regardless, even of whatever situation you're in, you should never go to bed hungry. That is not a good feeling at all. And you should always be satisfied, or try to find to always be satisfied at the end of each day, regardless of what your plan is. I get that, the further you're on with a certain program like a cut, you might just have to kind of suffer a few days if you really want to achieve that goal. But I'm this early on in the cut and I'm already feeling this. That's not a good thing, right? That's not a good sign. So I decided that I would go ahead and just eat at maintenance. Now, I did that for two main reasons. One, because again, if it's this early on into the cut and I'm already facing these types of problems, that is not something I can realistically sustain for the upcoming weeks. If I'm continuously just going to bed hungry, eventually, me personally, that is going to catch up to me, and I might run the risk of just maybe like overeating or just doing something that kind of compensates for that. And I really just don't want to do that, right? Um, I'm pretty disciplined on that stuff, but it does happen, like with anything, right? Where you're just like, F it, I'm just gonna eat, and then you might just overeat, and then you're just, you kind of like set yourself back. So I don't want to run the risk of potentially doing that, especially if this is already happening this early on. And also, too, the next day, so today, right? This all happened last night. Um, so Wednesday, right? Wednesday night. So also for Friday or Thursday, I knew that I had to hit legs. Now, legs is typically a very, very demanding workout for me. It's the most demanding workout for me by far. And what I didn't want to happen is for my hunger to carry on to Thursday and for me just to feel shitty that day, right? Due to either low energy or due to me just being hungry during my workout, which does t- take a hit on my performance. And so, because of that, I decided that it's just not worth it. It's not worth potentially going through those pains. I'd much rather just eat at maintenance that day and then just go back to my deficit the next day. And essentially, it just kind of serves as a reset. I'm not like losing any sort of progress because I'm just eating at maintenance. And how honestly you got to look at cutting or when you're trying to be in a deficit, I would definitely recommend you to look at it more so as a weekly thing rather than a daily thing. So what I mean by that is, say for instance you're trying to, be at a deficit of X amount of calories. I would recommend people to measure their deficit on a weekly basis rather than a daily basis. Now, you can still take like note of what your daily deficits are, but you should be looking at it, from a weekly standpoint, so that if you ever run into a day where you are just really hungry and you just can't be in a deficit, you're better off just being at maintenance, that's still okay. You're just going to be taking whatever your weekly deficit is, and that's going to tell you if you're in a deficit or not. So like an example, right? Day one and day two, for both of those days, I was roughly combined at a deficit of about like 1,700. Day three, so what just happened? I ate at maintenance. Again, that doesn't mean I slipped up or I'm gonna be, kind of gaining that weight back. I'm still at a deficit from those first 2 days. So in a sense, nothing really happened on Wednesday. So on Thursday, when I'm back in a deficit, I'm just going to be adding on to my weekly total. So when I get to the end of this week, if my deficit kind of total is a positive number, then you are going to be in a deficit and you will be losing some sort of weight. That's how I would really look at kind of cutting. Because if you look at it only at a daily as a daily thing, if say for instance you were to either slip up one day and you kind of eat at a surplus even, or you eat at maintenance, you're going to just beat yourself up over that, and you're not going to be looking at the whole picture. You've already made so much progress by you either slipping up or by you eating at maintenance or not making progress for that day. um, you're going to be looking at that as something that's bad, but it's really not. You got to be taking a look at the entire week. So because of that, and this is something that I'm kind of glad that this happened pretty early on, just so I can kind of share it and vocalize it online, because it does happen. And I was kind of expecting this to happen. I'm not going to lie, not this soon, but I knew it was eventually going to happen. And by me having a maintenance day, that's kind of a reset for me. So now, like for instance, today, the day that I'm recording this, this is my leg day. I just had my leg day. And this entire day, I felt great. And today, I am concluding the day at a deficit, about like 1,000 calories. Again, very, very on the high end. But if you watched my first video, this is kind of part of the plan that I have for this cut. So yeah, I'm back on track and I feel great. So by me having that 1 day reset where I eat at maintenance, it just made today so much easier and I can just continue executing the plan that I have, right? Whereas if I maybe went to bed hungry yesterday, sure, I would have been at a deficit yesterday, but who knows what would have happened today. I could have ate at a surplus because it would have just maybe driven me crazy. Or I also could have had a pretty shitty workout, because again, if you're hungry, at least for me, if I'm hungry going into a workout, that really affects my performance. One, I don't have that much energy, and also two, I'm just thinking about food the entire time. So why go through that pain? And especially when it comes down to a cutting phase, you really, really want to make sure that you prioritize how good your workouts are. Because again, regardless of you losing weight, you want to maintain as much muscle as possible. So that requires you to lift as heavy as you can and as intensely as you can. And if you're not doing that, then you run the risk of potentially losing what you already have. And that's the last thing that I want, right? So that's why what I did yesterday, I pretty much just evaluated what was happening and I was like, okay, I can kind of let this get the best of me, or I'll just eat at maintenance and then I'll just continue executing the plan, right? And that's what you kind of got to do when things like that do happen. Even if you're at a deficit that's not as extreme as mine, that could still occur because your body maybe is already so used to just consuming so many calories that when you strip away any sort of food or any sort of calories, your body probably will eventually feel that. And it'll let you know that, right? So especially for people that are new to kind of losing weight or how to do that, that is something that you can expect, right? So just make sure you plan accordingly. And again, if you see these things happening, just recognize what's happening and then just make a plan for it. So yeah, that's essentially what happened, right? And today, I again got through the day because of what I did yesterday. Today's deficit felt was pretty good. It was pretty much on plan with what I wanted, and I feel great. So I'm just gonna plan on tomorrow being at a deficit again. And if, say, for instance, something pops up where I'm hungrier than usual for whatever reason, then I will just repeat what I just did and I should be fine, right? So, again, little things that you just need to be aware of as you're going through with this. And I wasn't expecting this, right? I was not expecting this to happen on that day, especially on an active rest day. You'd think that because I'm not moving as much, I'm not going to be as hungry. But for whatever reason, I was, right? And I recognized that and I did something about it. I can't just ignore that, right? So, just something that I want to share pretty much straight off the bat. So, yeah, that's what we did today, or that's what kind of happened on Wednesday and today, Thursday. But now, kind of moving on to the topic of today, right? Just today. So, this morning we woke up, and another thing that I kind of had to adapt to. I didn't beat myself up over it because it's really not that big of a deal, but I forgot to weigh myself. That was something that I told myself I was going to do every single day, but I forgot. I had a pretty light meal when after pretty soon after I woke up, and then I remembered I forgot to weigh myself. But by that point, me going on the scale and trying to measure that with some food in my system, that might not make things as accurate because I tend to weigh myself fasted, and that's what I'd recommend to anybody who is trying to measure like their weight. Do it when you're fasted in the morning, just because that's an actually like accurate depiction as to what your weight is, right? When you don't have any food really in your system and it's just you, right? So yeah, I forgot to do that this morning, but again, that's totally fine. I'll just weigh myself tomorrow and I'll get a sense as to how much weight or where I'm at in weight wise. And so yeah, did that this morning, or didn't do that this morning. But I had a light breakfast. I did some steady state cardio again, still keeping it pretty light so far onto the cut. So right now I'm just going on walks in the morning, about like 3 to 4-ish miles, since today also it was pretty nice out. So I got the chance to do that, and I always take that chance, especially with this time of year. But things are going to get better. So in terms of like the weather. So it's going to be easier to go on those walks. But I did that this morning, went on a walk, and um yeah, I at least for right now, I'm not sure if I stated this in a different video, but when I first start off on these cuts, I tend to keep cardio as light as I can while still making like progress on my weight loss. So what I mean by that is I could just go crazy and just do like a shit ton of cardio, but I've when I've tried that in the past, and I feel like it's a pretty common thing for a lot of people, at least from what I've heard. If you do that from the get-go, you're gonna kind of burn yourself out and you're gonna be sick of doing cardio later. So I tend to keep it pretty light in the beginning, and then if I'm ever seeing like my weight not coming down too much or as much as I'd want, then I might up it up a little bit, but I do that as I need to. I again just keep it light in the beginning, and then later down the road in a few weeks or something, I might up it up a little bit. And I just do additional things that I like to do. So I might go like on a light jog, I might go on the Stairmaster, things of that sort. But I tend to again keep it pretty light. So did a walk in the morning, and then this afternoon, so a few hours ago, I just got back and then I hit legs. And my leg workouts, like I said, those tend to be my most demanding ones. So I, especially for my leg workouts, I want to make sure that I feel the best that I can. So um for today, and again, we're trying to retain as much strength as possible, especially when it comes to the squat. I really, really try to prioritize that movement. So for today, we went ahead and hit legs. We started off with squats, where I went for a heavy single of about, I believe, 360 pounds. And I did some triples for, um, or a set of five, I believe, with 315, and another set of five for with 295. So when it comes to the squat, especially right now, I tend to really just train that movement for purely strength. That's just how I like to train the squat, to be honest. I could do more volume, like doing reps of 8 or something else, but me personally, I don't like to do that. I just like to go for as heavy as I can with good form, obviously, but keep the reps not too high. That way, it gives me the chance to also have enough energy for some of the other movements that I'm going to be doing. Because my leg day usually consists of like 5 different exercises. And if I were to kind of go crazy with squats in the beginning, I might not be able to put as much effort into the other exercises, but I still try to go as heavy as I can. But again, I just go for reps a little bit less than the other ones. So that's what I did for squats. And then next, I moved on to the leg press. Typically, if I were to do either a squat or a leg press in the beginning, because those are more so compounded movements and you're working a lot of different muscles, if I were to do one of those movements as exercise one, which again, usually I do. My second exercise, or what I usually followed up with, is hamstring curls. The reason being is because, and I may have mentioned this in one of my other videos, I like to cycle muscle groups in between my exercises. So what I mean by that is if I am doing, say for instance, a squat that targets the quads pretty heavily, it targets really the entire leg, um, but the quad is the one that's usually being the most worked, or one of them at least. Um, I like to give the quad a bit of a break before I hit it again in a different exercise, just so I can make sure that it's as fresh as possible. It's at 100%. Whereas if I were to tackle something in, like if I were to tackle a quad focused exercise again, I might be a little bit gassed from the squat still, or the leg press, right? Does that make sense? So that's why I like usually do the hamstring curl as like my second exercise, because I just hit quads pretty heavily. I want to give them a little bit of a break, so I'm going to focus on my hamstrings next, and then for my third exercise I can go back to something like quads, right? So that's the idea behind that. And I feel like when I've started cycling muscle groups like that on all of my days, really, I just feel really, really fresh. So that's what I did. Um, that's what I usually do, right? So with squats, and then or with my leg days. So for today, I hit squats again, again in the beginning, and then I moved on to hamstring curls, and then I moved on to leg press, and then after my leg press, I went over to leg extensions, and then calf raises. So that's typically kind of the flow that I take it. Usually, again, the main philosophy with what I do is just to cycle muscle groups, but there are some instances where some of the machines are being used and whatnot. So you also kind of have to adapt, unless you want to wait. But if I feel like the gym is a bit busy and I really don't want to wait that much, then I might just kind of not, or train the same muscle group for the next exercise, and then just kind of get on with that. So, um, again, you kind of have to adapt. I do my best to kind of follow that principle of cycling muscle groups, but if the gym is really busy, then I might just say fuck it for like um, one or two exercises. But yeah, so that was the schedule that I followed for today. After I finished that, I went ahead and did a little bit of cardio afterwards, just like a light walk on the treadmill, and I did a little bit of stretching, and then that was pretty much that. With every exercise too, something that I just also kept note of in my mind. Again, I journal all these things, so I write these things down, just to make sure that I know like how much weight I'm putting up and how many reps and sets I'm doing. But one thing that I did kind of just uh, that I recognize for today is all of my like leg exercise. I'm still able to lift as heavy, like use. I'm able to lift. Uh, what am I trying to say? I'm able to lift pretty heavy still. And what I mean by that is I'm still able to kind of go for an extra rep or go for a PR. An example is like for hamstring curls today, I was able to up my usual weight up by 5 pounds and do a decent amount of reps. So that in a sense is like a little PR for me, and I'm still able to PR even though I am cutting weight, which is really, really good. That's what I want to be doing on every single day. There might be some days where that doesn't happen. That's okay. But my mentality is, at least when I'm training, is kind of just forgetting that I'm even cutting and just training as I would as if I were bulking, where I'm trying to chase PRs. I'm trying to lift as heavy again as I can, so that again I can keep as much muscle as I can. So that's kind of my mentality, that when I go through these exercises, is I'm just treating it like I'm not even cutting. I don't even remember that I'm cutting, and I'm just trying to put in as much effort as possible. So That was something that, again, that I kind of recognized after I finished today, or while I was going through my workout, is that I'm still able to lift pretty heavy, which I'm very, very happy about. Because especially for legs, legs is typically something that does take a hit. At least in the past, it's taken a hit the fastest. Um, that's where I notice typically that I lose strength first. But so far, we're doing good. So, no real concerns there. Nothing that I really have to change. Um, there are some instances where, depending on how my progress is going, and I do have some plans in case it does happen. But if there are ever any sort of situations where I feel like my strength is going down for something, that is just something that I need to be aware of, and I might need to make a plan for that, right? So, but again, as of right now, things are going smoothly, so I'm not going to be changing anything. So, we concluded that yeah, we concluded that day, or we concluded that workout, and yeah, everything is still going very, very good. So finished off the day, and even right now it's kind of getting pretty late, um and again, hunger levels are perfectly fine. I'm still in a deficit and no real concerns there. So tomorrow will be an active rest day. I don't train the day after leg day. So I'll just be doing some light cardio probably in the morning. Granted, the weather isn't too bad, and that's pretty much it. So we'll see how hungry I am tomorrow. Hopefully, it's not going to be like yesterday, but if it is, that's okay, right? We're gonna do what we did, or we're gonna do the same thing that we did previously, and again, we're taking a deficit. We're taking a look at this at a weekly kind of level. So once we honestly conclude this first week, I'm going to give you a sense as to what my weekly deficit is. And I'll also give you some sense as to how much weight I lost. Because that's also another thing. We talked about, a caloric deficit, looking at that at a weekly view. But also, when it comes to your weight, I definitely do the same thing for that as well. Because right now, I am losing some weight every single day. But again, that's pretty typical when you're starting a cut, because you're just losing a lot of water because you're just giving your body less. If you're having less carbs, um, your body typically doesn't store as much water because you have like, less carbohydrates in your system. So, um, the weight will come off pretty quickly, but that weight is eventually going to kind of slow down or almost plateau. And then you'll start seeing very little decreases after that, assuming you're still in a deficit. So that's why it's important. And that's why that's why it's important to kind of measure deficits at a weekly level, because after you kind of get past that initial phase of losing a lot of weight pretty quickly, there might be some days where I won't lose any weight, like the scale won't say I lost any weight, or maybe I even gained a little bit of weight. But that shouldn't alarm you. Your body fluctuates with weight all the time for various reasons, even when you're cutting weight, or even when you're in a deficit and you're cutting. And that's perfectly normal, right? So if maybe one day you notice that you are still the same weight as the day before, or you possibly gained a little bit of weight, that should not be a red alarm to you that you should be upping your cardio or increasing whatever and doing something kind of exaggerated. um, that will pretty much dig you you'll you'll soon realize that that's kind of just digging yourself into a bad hole, because um, that happens pretty commonly when you're cutting. It's not always going to be the scale going down, down, down. So, uh, yeah, when that happens, which probably will happen soon, I'll let you guys know that. Who knows? It might even happen tomorrow when I record my next video, and maybe I see that I gained a little bit of weight or lost or stayed at the same weight. I think my lowest weigh-in right now was 182.7. So we'll see what tomorrow's weight is. But I'm kind of going on a different tangent about that. The reason why I bring up the weight thing is because, again, because of those things, because your weight will fluctuate, that's why you should be looking at how much weight you lost on average during a week, right? So on Monday to Sunday, how much weight did you lose on average between that time? That's the number that you should be looking at, um, uh, kind of getting when you're looking as to how much weight you lost. So, again, because your weight will fluctuate, you want to be getting the average of the entire week, right? And how I've seen, oh, excuse me. Jesus, there we go. Sorry, guys. I have like, I don't know if it's just the time of the year or something, but I have some like, not bad, but I definitely have some allergies right now. Yeah, just bear with me. But typically, how I've seen that being done, like how people measure, their weight at a weekly basis, is essentially you go through, and you just take the average of all your weight measurements for 1 week. And depending on what that average number is, that'll give you an indication as if you lost weight or gained weight or stayed the same weight from the previous week. So that's why you want to do this on a weekly basis, so you can compare the weeks instead of the days. Because again, if you compare the days, it won't really give you an accurate depiction because that'll fluctuate. So you can take the average for the weeks, or for like 1 week, and then you can just measure that with the previous week. That's typically how I do it, because that gives me an indication as to, again, if I gained weight or lost weight, or if I stayed the same, and if I need to make any sort of adjustments. But if you see that, again, in one day it didn't go as planned and maybe you gained weight or stayed the same weight, don't freak out. That's normal. You're probably still losing weight. Just check at the end of the week when you get all these measurements, and then just see if that's the case or not, if you actually lost weight or not. So, um, yeah, I think that's the only thing really to say about that. So again, we'll see what the weight is for tomorrow. It's going to be an active rest day, so there isn't too much that I kind of need to do for that. And yeah, I guess I'll report back to see how that is for tomorrow. Okay. All right. Sounds good, guys. I appreciate you guys for tuning in for day 4, and I will catch you guys for day 5. Peace.